Part 21. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 201. Chapter 201 Sunian, your chips are too low. Lu Jing said on the surface, do you think I don't know? It's such a simple thing. Sunian also exposed it. You just come to me to discuss cooperation, Sunian, your bargaining chip is too low, right? Lu Jing mocked. This is the only bargaining chip we have now, which is indeed not enough, but Baikan will help you deal with Huo Linyuan, and I will help you deal with Li Baikan. In this way, you will have more chances of success. Mr. Lu, you are a smart person, you know how to choose, it's useless to say more, it depends on what you think. Sunian turned around and left immediately after saying this. After all, she had never thought about cooperating with this guy. She just came to cause some destruction, and now that she has achieved her goal, of course she has to run away. When Sunian had not taken a few steps, Lu Jing's voice rang out, okay, I promise you. Sunian smiled and continued walking forward. But at the next corner, she almost bumped into Li Baikan. Damn, this plot is really corny. The bad guy does bad things and is overheard by the protagonist, so as to describe the viciousness of the supporting character, but this trick is really retarded. Normally in a plot like this, the vicious female supporting character will change her face and attack her. It's so retarded. The key point is that even if I know that this is a retarded plot, I still have to act it out. It's really difficult for me as a vicious female supporting role. Baikan, why are you here? Li Baikan has always been there. He feels that with Sunian's blessing, Lu Jing will definitely be more responsible. In this case, he will not need to see Lan Min again for a while. I am the man of the house, am I not normal here? Sunian's smile froze. Damn, this guy actually imitated me. But it's okay, I have no other merits except being generous, and I can't be fussy about it. It's normal, of course it's normal. Sunian put his arms around Li Baikan's neck. And such a big movement naturally attracted Lu Jing. When Lu Jing saw the two people hugging each other, his eyes showed contempt. Humbling with another woman actually, even if Lan Ren and Huo Linyuan really separated, then Li Baikan is not worthy of her. Now Lu Jing feels more and more that he is the one who is most worthy of Lan Min. Lu Jing sneered, I didn't expect that the relationship between you and your husband would be so good and so loving. I really envy others. Sunian showed a shy expression when he heard this. But the next moment, her expression almost changed. The reason for this was that Li Baikan actually held her waist. What's wrong, does Lu Jing have any objections? Lu Jing shook his head, no objection, of course I have no objection, but I'm not as lucky as you, eating from the bowl and looking at the pot. Sunian strongly disagrees with this point. Hey, it would be great if this guy really eats from my bowl. Every day I look like a chaste and fierce woman, giving me no chance at all. Li Baikan. If Mr. Lu wants to, I can arrange a few pots for you, and you can eat as much as you want. But when Lu Jing heard this, he immediately waved his hand, I am not as lucky as you. I, Lu Jing, can only pretend to be the next person in my life. I will never touch other women. While Lu Jing was talking, Li Baikan took Sunian away. This made Lu Jing unhappy. Hey, can you be polite? I haven't finished speaking yet. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 202. Chapter 202 The old man is serious. Sunian always thought that the old man was just joking. But at this moment, she looked at the photo in front of her, but she couldn't say anything. Nian, this is a good man I have found temporarily, you take your pick. Li Jianhong introduced with enthusiasm, the pile on the left is rich and powerful, and the pile on the right is rich and powerful. Sunian, what's the difference? A man who is rich and powerful is the kind of perfect man you women like. After all, what you women value is that he must be better than his predecessor. But for those who have no money and power, I think you have done too much for this little Lee Baikan. You can pick a few to treat emotional intelligence. Sunian. It's so considerate. Sunian swore that if she hadn't still counted on Lee Baikan's seeds, she would definitely have chosen him. At this time, Lee Ji-eunhong came close to Sunian's ear and said, "Nian Nian, you must not lose your head at this time. That guy said it so nicely. Now it is just a man's possessiveness, so now we must strike while the iron is hot and make that guy jealous and let him know you have other options." While the two were whispering, a dark-faced Lee Baikan slowly appeared. He understood the old man's plan. But Sunian was too excited. These men are so good. Sure enough, old men are still hot. Men know men best, and the men they choose are all top-notch. If Mo Bao is born, then I must choose carefully. A coldness appeared on the corner of Lee Baikan's mouth. Don't worry, you have absolutely no chance to choose. Nian Nian, Dad knows that your child is too honest, so I specially prepared a plan for you. When he said this, Lee Ji-eunhong took out a document and handed it to her hand. Zhizi is more like a father. If you use this method, you will definitely get it done. Dad, what's done? Lee Baikan's light voice sounded. Of course we have to deal with that little brat. Lee Baikan. When he said this, Lee Ji-eunhong realized something was wrong, and turned around to see his wronged son. When he saw Lee Baikan, Lee Ji-eunhong felt a little flustered. But then I thought about it, I am Lee Baikan's father. There is a man who gets flustered when he sees his son. I mean, I've almost finished the Huo family's affairs. I need to give Nian Nian a good voice and let Nian Nian know who is good to her. Sunian nodded crazily beside him. In order not to have anything to do with Huo Linyuan, Lee Baikan once again let the plot control him and let the old man handle it. But he did not want this old man to squeeze him. The key thing is that seeing Sunian looking at the old man with admiring eyes really made Lee Baikan a little depressed. He now doubted that this old man really wanted to bring him and Sunian together. In the eyes of the old man, Lee Baikan didn't say anything because he felt guilty. You must know that it was not easy for his son to feel guilty once. If this is the case, then he should make good use of this opportunity. Don't even care about your own wife, how good a man can be. Lee Baikan didn't say anything, but walked to the table. Calmly picked up the photo on the table and tore it off. Lee Ji-eunhong. Lee Ji-eunhong winked at Sunian. Look, Dad's idea is good and effective, so you still have to follow Dad's wishes. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jung Word. Chapter 203. Chapter 203. Sunian, do you want to cuckold me? Under the proud gaze of the old man, Lee Baikan threw the things into the trash can. Dad, what you said makes sense. If you give me a try this time, I will learn from you next time. Lee Ji-eunhong sneered, as long as you are willing to learn. Then please teach me, Dad. By the way, Huo Linyuan is not a simple person, so I think, Dad, you should go to the company to deal with it now. After all, Sunian has been so wrong this time, you have to treat Huo Linyuan well. Get back home. Don't mislead Sunian here. I feel like there is a sour smell in the air. How could Lee Ji-eunhong miss this opportunity to tease his son? When Lee Baikan heard this, he looked around, as if he was smelling the smell. After smelling around, he turned his attention to the old man again. Is there any? Why don't I smell any sour smell? Dad, you are not too old, So you have something wrong with your nose. Do you want me to arrange a physical examination for you? Lee Ji-eunhong. Lee Baiken immediately took out his mobile phone and made a call. Josu, please arrange a physical examination for the old man. It requires a full body examination. No, my health couldn't be better. It would be better if you don't make me angry. Lee Ji-eunhong couldn't stay any longer and left after saying this. Sunian looked at the old man's angry look. Although it was a bit immoral, it was really funny. At this moment, Lee Baiken's voice sounded in her ears. Plan on how to conquer Lee Baiken. Sunian. It's over, I'm just here to watch the show, and I don't care about hiding anything anymore. Sunian turned around and saw Lee Baiken sitting on the sofa, flipping through documents. He lowered his eyes, his face was solemn and serious, just like he usually sat in the office of the president of Lee Group, handling those 100 billion contracts. Sunian's heart is in her throat now. And Lee Baiken continued to say in a low voice, the first thing is to keep your distance, keep as much distance from him as possible, and find opportunities to propose bed separation. The reason for bed separation can be, I have experienced too many things during this period, so if you want to have a quiet room, be careful not to show too many expressions when you say this. Sunian. Haha, thank you, I can now dig out 3 rooms and 1 living room on the spot. Second, don't give him too many looks, look at him as little as you can every day if conditions permit, look at other men in front of him as much as possible to express your desire for other men. I am so touched, the old man is so considerate, so considerate. The strength of Lee Baiken's fingers increased. It would be weird if this old man didn't cuckold him in his previous life. Sunian shuddered subconsciously when he felt Lee Baiken's eyes on him. Sunian, do you want to cuckold me? Lee Baiken said almost through gritted teeth. When Sunian heard this, why did he feel that Lee Baiken said, Sunian, do you want to die? She immediately put on a smile and approached Lee Baiken. Baiken, this is all Dad's joke, really. Lee Baiken took the person directly into his arms. Really? Sunian nodded wildly. The man's hands wandered around her slender waist. Sunian's body couldn't help but tremble. At this moment, Sunian really felt like he was the meat on Lee Baiken's chopping board, and he could cut it as long as he wanted. But Sunian was really wronged. This is obviously the fault of the old man. This stubborn licker has the ability to cause trouble for your father. Why does he come to trouble me? Carrot, knows how to bully the weak and avoid the strong. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 204. Chapter 204. Isn't this a waste of money? If I remember correctly, you said before that you love me so much that you can't breathe, and you are reluctant to do this to me even if you think about it. These words filled Sunian's mind with questions. Love so much that I can't breathe, did I say this? How could I forget? So disgusting. But even though her mind was full of questions, she still followed Lee Baiken's words and continued, yes, I just love you so much that I can't breathe. Loving you has become a part of my soul. If I stop loving you, then I will remove you from my heart, pull it out of your soul. Although Lee Baiken felt uncomfortable, he also knew that this was an opportunity. He kissed Sunian on the cheek. The old man's behavior reminded me that since I have chosen to be with you, we should indeed make some plans for the next step. For example, you should follow the old man's method and write something about yourself. I think those things can enhance our relationship, so we are doing it. Love plan. Lee Baiken nodded. He felt that Sunian's prejudice against him was a bit too deep. If he followed Sunian's wishes, she should be able to feel the change in herself slowly. However, Lee Baiken's face turned dark the next moment. Sure enough, it is father and son who can actually think of a way. By the way, I can write several times a day. Yes, this is an opportunity, and this guy proposed it himself. How about I check the postures again, and I will also write down which postures have a higher chance of getting pregnant. Lee Baiken. Listening to this woman's messy thoughts, Lee Baiken really wanted to open her mind and take a look. Let's see if these are the only dirty thoughts in her head. Lee Baiken immediately turned Sunian around and forced her to look at him. Yes, whatever you want me to do, I will do it according to your wishes. You must know that I have never had any experience in falling in love, so I have to feel my way through everything. Sunian nodded obediently. But I think a stable relationship must start from purity. Sunian's face was a little broken. So I think we should have less close contact at first and take it slow. You can take care of the rest by yourself. Sunian. This scheming licking dog. In order to help the heroine get my kidney, the show was attracted to me, but she didn't even want to sacrifice her body. Is this a blank wolf? Your uncle's. Damn it. You deserve to be a bitch. What's wrong with your eyes? Do you have any objection to what I said? A smile crept up the corner of Lee Baiken's mouth unconsciously. Sunian can only do it. Adjustment. My own. Expression. She is smiling. He said to Lee Baiken, Baiken, what do you mean by this? Your words are the golden rule for me. Whatever you say is what it is. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you, but if you have any objections, then it's just that what you want is my body, not me. Sunian smiled and shook his head, and said with difficulty, Baiken, what are you talking about? What I want is your heart. I want your heart to be the same as mine, and to be mine wholeheartedly. So I will do whatever you ask me to do. What? MD, what else is good about you besides that body? You licking dog, you'd better not let me get you. If you really let me get you, then I will get tired of playing with you and I will definitely throw you away. If you beg me then I will never look back. Bah, you are a licking dog, who cares about you? Then Lee Baiken patted her shoulder as if giving orders to his subordinates, I'll leave this matter to you. After speaking, Lee Baiken tore up the documents prepared by the old man without hesitation. Throw it in the trash. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 205. Chapter 205. What's the point of purity? Love plan. Sunian thought about it for a whole day but couldn't write a few words. It's not that she doesn't know what to write, it's just that she is very depressed. A stable relationship starts with purity. What's the point of purity? The key point is that Sunian knows that once he is pure, Lee Baiken will definitely take this as an excuse. Sunian couldn't help but fantasize about it. After that, Lee Baiken took this and said seriously, didn't it mean purity? Why are you still touching me? Thinking of that scene, Sunian became even more depressed. She played with the pen in her hand casually. In fact, she went through so much trouble just to get insurance. Does it have to be that day? In fact, you can give up. The main thing is to get the seeds that day. If you think about it the other way around, if you are honest during this period, then maybe Lee Baiken, a licking dog, will slowly relax his vigilance. In this case, he might be able to hit the target with one hit that day. Thinking about Sunian like this made her feel much better. I immediately opened the all-purpose Baidu and started searching for things that couples should do. Then copy. But Lee Baiken's attitude still made Sunian a little uncomfortable. It's only 3 minutes, it's so rare, and there is no skill at all. If it wasn't for my calligraphy, then how could I like it? Wait until you die, don't say 3 minutes, I can find 3 hours. 3 hours, what 3 hours? When he heard this, Sunian's smile suddenly froze. Immediately I saw Lee Baiken wearing home clothes. Why is this guy always so elusive and scary? It's really hateful. He heard something again this time. Sunian shook his head. That's right, I think this is related to the future of the two of us, so I think we should think about it slowly and carefully, and not be too anxious. Even if it takes 3 hours or 30 hours, then that's okay. The reason why Lee Baiken appeared here was because he was curious about what Sunian was thinking. But now Lee Baiken feels that he has thought too much, and this woman can think of anything good. Although he didn't know what Sunian wrote. But he can be sure that it is definitely not good. Lee Baiken reached out to get what Sunian wrote, but he couldn't get it yet. Baiken, you are right, our relationship must be pure at the beginning, so I decided that the first step is that we should sleep in separate rooms, starting from the purest place. These words made Lee Baiken freeze. He was a little uncomfortable seeing the serious look on Sunian's face. Since you can't take advantage, why are you letting this wander around in front of me? It's a waste of my girl's feelings. Acting is very tiring. Lee Baiken. Why is it different from what he thought? Lee Baiken wanted to suppress her messy temper, but he didn't want her to be like this. It seems a bit too much. Lee Baiken couldn't help but look at Sunian carefully. Such a look made Sunian a little uncomfortable. What's the matter with this licking dog look? Looking at me with such a look is like writing the words "I don't believe it" on my face. If you don't believe it, I'll let you, this licking dog, look at you. You don't count in my eyes. I want to play with you. It's your blessing. Lee Baiken really feels that he has gone too far now. Then, Sunian moved all her things out of Lee Baiken's room in a hurry, leaving not a hair behind. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 206. Chapter 206. Chapter 206. The Fourth Dream. Lee Baiken looked at the room, and for some reason, it suddenly felt a little empty. He looked at the room carefully. Every place is the same, but it feels a bit empty inexplicably. He sat on the bed, looked at the place where Sunian was sleeping, and couldn't help but laugh. Fair enough. They took their time, just like a normal couple. After all, their start was not very good. But at night, Lee Baiken had insomnia. I turned it over and over, trying to catch some of the so-called sleepiness, but I couldn't. Unknown to him, Lee Baiken sat up directly and pressed his hand between his eyebrows. He didn't know why he had insomnia. If it came to that, then it wouldn't be because of Sunian that he couldn't sleep since he moved here from his old house for one night. Like this, Lee Baiken sat for a while before lying down again. This time he finally entered a dream. In the dream, he seemed to be in a dark place. He felt very uncomfortable, the kind of discomfort was indescribable. Soon he found that he seemed unable to move, as if he was imprisoned by the plot again. When he realized this, Lee Baiken couldn't help but laugh. He is really obsessed with this plot now, and he even dreams about plot control. Gradually, his vision became clearer. Only realized that he seemed to be in a hotel room at the moment. I remember that I seemed to have been here before. The things should have been dropped here. They couldn't just be lost like this. This voice. It seems to be from Sunian. The burning sensation in his body told him that he must have been hit. At this moment, the room was pushed open. Mr. Lee, I'm sorry, I disturbed you. Lee Baiken raised his head and saw Sunian's face full of apologies. It's like this. Dad gave me an earring a few days ago, but it was lost. Did you see it, Mr. Lee? If you didn't see it, then I'll go look for it somewhere else now. Sunian turned around and planned to leave. Then Lee Baiken watched his body move, quickly caught up with Sunian, and pulled her back directly. Who is as brave as you to drug me? Hearing what he said, Li Baikon's heart suddenly suffocated. Wouldn't this be something that happened in a previous life? Then Li Baikon looked at the woman in front of him. He saw fear that he had never seen before in the woman's eyes, and he could clearly feel her body trembling. I don't, Mr. Li, you misunderstood. No, I really didn't, you really misunderstood. Then he saw himself throwing her onto the bed. No, haha, no, do you think I am a fool? Sunian, do you know the consequences of doing this? Since you have done it, you must have thought about how to bear it. I beg you, please let me go. As long as you let me go, then I can do anything you want, I beg you. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 207. Chapter 207 The Fourth Dream, Part 2. He looked at Sunian lying lifelessly on the bed. I don't know how long it took before Sunian smiled. Laughing and laughing, tears came out. Although she was still smiling, Li Baikon felt like his heart was being twisted. Stop laughing, don't laugh anymore, Sunian, are you okay, Sunian, what's wrong with you, are you feeling uncomfortable? But no matter what he said, Sunian couldn't seem to hear him. At this time, the door of the room was pushed open. Sunian, you bitch, you actually killed Baikon. I want you to pay for Baikon with your life. When Li Baikon raised his head, he saw Lan Min charging up menacingly. When he saw this woman, Li Baikon's heart clenched. Then Li Baikon saw Lan Min pounce on Sunian, and raised his hand to hit Sunian. When he saw Lan Min raising his hand, Li Baikon's heart clenched. He stretched out his hand to subconsciously block Sunian, but Lan Min's hand passed directly through his body. Damn it! But the next moment, Li Baikon saw Sunian grabbing Lan Min's wrist. Why, my husband and I live together as husband and wife, what do you think? I'm not your man. After Sunian said this, he pushed Lan Min to the ground. The whole action describes flowing water. But as a bystander, Li Baikon could feel Sunian's discomfort at the moment. She picked up clothes from the ground and put them on like a walking zombie. Sunian, forget about drugging Baikon. Why did you want to kill Baikon? What on earth do you want to do? I tell you, I will definitely help Baikon get revenge, and I will cut you into pieces. Li Baikon hearing this, my heart suffocated. What, he is dead. Then the screen changes. He saw the old man standing in front of his body with an expressionless face. Sunian looked at the old man nervously. Dad, please express my condolences. But the old man sneered, sorry, what's the point of saying sorry? He died. Should I be sad? Why should I be sad? He died just right, and he just happened to be unpopular with me. Ha ha ha, God opened his eyes. In order to make me sad, I really worry about living a few more years. In a few days, I will find a new wife and give birth to a new son. I will teach him well this time. I will never let him be like this. Guys like that. The more he talked, the more smiles appeared on his face. But Li Baikon felt very sad. At this time, the housekeeper came to the old man and said, Master, the time has come. We should send a young master off. Go, take this guy away quickly. If this guy is in my sight for a while, I will be mad at him. After saying this, the old man waved his hand. Then he watched his body being put into the coffin. When the lid is about to be closed, the old man, who was originally calm, suddenly rushed in front of the coffin and pushed everyone away. Don't touch him, don't touch him, don't touch him. Li Baikon looked at the old man with scarlet eyes and looked around him warily. No one is allowed to touch him, no one is allowed to touch him. He remembered seeing his father like this when his mother passed away. Why do you do this to me, Lee Baiken, you bastard, I shouldn't have given birth to a like you. The old man sat on the ground, tears streaming down his face involuntarily. At this time, Sunian, who was next to him, also knelt on the ground. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 208. Chapter 208. Did she, just, slap that guy Lee Baiken? Lee Baiken woke up from his dream. He touched the corners of his eyes. Unsurprisingly, I felt tears. The cold touch of tears brought his thoughts back. Is that dream really a dream? In the dream, he could clearly feel the despair of Sunian and the old man. The feeling in the dream is still very clear to this day. Lee Baiken hurriedly got up and went to the bathroom to wash his face with cold water. He looked at himself in the mirror and wondered if he was overthinking. If Sunian was really that uncomfortable, if he had been so rude to her in his previous life, then with Sunian's temperament, if it was really that painful, how could it be possible to repeat the same mistakes? It must be just a dream. Must be overthinking. Although Lee Baiken comforted himself like this, the picture in his mind could not be dissipated for a long time. It's better now. Lee Baiken, who originally had a bad sleep tonight, couldn't sleep at all. He hurriedly came to Sunian's bedroom. I reached out to push the door open, but found that it was locked. Immediately knocked on the door hard. Soon the door opened. When Lee Baiken saw Sunian yawning and opening the door for him, his heart suddenly became quiet. Sunian glanced at Lee Baiken. What's wrong with this guy? It's not even bright yet, so he knocks on the door. Is there a fire? Forget it if he is a licker, don't have any brain problems. Sunian, who was woken up, said in a bad tone, what's wrong? Lee Baiken didn't say anything, just stretched out his hand and hugged the person. When the smell that belonged to Sunian surrounded his body, Lee Baiken's panicked heart calmed down again. I had a nightmare. It's okay, it's just a nightmare. Things in dreams will never happen. But Sunian, who was held in his arms, stiffened. The next moment, he struggled out of Lee Baiken's arms with great force and gave Lee Baiken a slap in the face without hesitation. Then the door closed with a bang. Lee Baiken. Sunian closed the door and plunged back into the warm humility. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Sunian sat up immediately. She looked at her hands in disbelief. Did she, just, slap that guy Lee Baiken? It's over, it's really over. Even the King of Heaven and I can't save her. Sunian buried herself directly in the bed. What went wrong with her mind just now? She actually hit Lee Baiken, how could she fall in love like this? Let's talk about Cotton. Sunian now feels that she is finished, really finished. But you can't blame her for this. You think, you were suddenly disturbed while you were having a sweet dream, and it wasn't for such a lame reason. Anyone with a little temper would be angry. What are you having nightmares about? Sunian looked at his hands. Not to mention, it feels really good to hit him. Hey. But it's cool, but how can I explain it to Lee Baiken? If she guessed right now, then that guy is probably waiting for her full of anger. He is even dreaming about it. How should he torment himself? When thinking of this, Sunian sighed deeply. If she guessed correctly, Lee Baiken did this to make love real. Sunian couldn't help but sigh deeply again. Sunian, no wonder you are single. I don't even understand what I'm doing. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 209. Chapter 209 Sunian, will you make the same mistake again? As the saying goes, if you extend your head, it is also the same as shrinking your head. So even if Sunian is struggling, he must show up. When Sunian came to the restaurant and saw the obvious palm prints on Lee Baiken's face, he smiled. Then he sat silently far away from Lee Baiken. Shit, am I so strong? There is no way, I practiced it with Lanmin in my previous life, so I got used to it. This guy shouldn't be angry because of this love scene between the heroine and me. Forget it, I'm thick-skinned anyway, so I just pretend I don't know anything, and I think it's impossible for me to have such a stubborn self-esteem. He directly admitted that he had been beaten like this. After all, if he admitted it, he would be so embarrassed. Yes, that's right. Lee Baiken, who was having a meal, put his cup on the table. In fact, Lee Baiken was not angry after being beaten. He also realized that it was a good thing for him to disturb others' sleep. Especially when he saw Sunian at this moment, he felt even more embarrassed. Baiken, what's wrong with your face? Why is it red? Did a bug bite you last night? Sunian decided to take the initiative. Let's talk about it first. Sunian felt that even if Lee Baiken licked him again, he was still a grown man. He couldn't let a grown man directly say that he was beaten like this by a woman. Lee Baiken curled his lips when he saw the woman's nervous and guilty eyes, and then continued following her words. There were indeed a lot of mosquitoes last night. Hearing this, Sunian's heart relaxed. It's so risky, so risky. Lee Baiken really wants to save face. As long as he doesn't say anything, he will refuse to admit it and will never give this guy a chance to cause trouble for him. Baiken, it's almost autumn now, when there are the most mosquitoes. It's also my fault. When I moved things yesterday, I didn't pay attention to closing the door, which didn't let the mosquitoes in. But don't worry, Baiken, I will definitely arrange a servant. Get rid of all the mosquitoes in your room and ensure you have a good sleep tonight. Then it's going to be troublesome. No trouble, no trouble. I am happy to do things for you, Baiken. Then for the sake of drama, Sunian personally put a big mosquito repellent in Lee Baiken's room. After she finished it, she walked up to Lee Baiken with a smile and said, "Okay Baiken, you should be able to sleep well tonight." Lee Baiken, who was watching the whole process, also agreed and said, "I think so." However, after finishing speaking, when Lee Baiken saw Sunian's bright smile in front of him, he felt a little blocked for no reason, and then he couldn't help but said, "Sunian, can I ask you a question?" "What's the question? Please ask." Baiken. Sunian's heart suddenly jumped. What to do, what to do, what to do? What should I do if this guy comes to trouble me? What should I do? What if this guy wants to fight back? My face, as silky as an egg, what should I do if it gets damaged by me? Under Sunian's frightened eyes, Lee Baiken walked up to her, looked at her, and said word by word, "Sunian, if you have ever experienced a painful thing." When he said this, Sunian's lifeless look appeared in Lee Baiken's mind again. He took a deep breath and said, "Will you make the same mistake again?" End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 210. Chapter 210. The old man has sent something. After Lee Baiken said this, he stared at Sunian. His heart was pounding. What if Sunian had really experienced that scene? So what should we do? What should he do? But he still couldn't help but think that the dream was just a dream and not real. But Lee Baiken only saw doubts in Sunian's eyes, painful things, specifically those kind of things. Life is worse than death. Sunian lowered his eyes, as if thinking about something. At this moment, Lee Baiken's heart was really in his throat. Since he could remember, Lee Baiken had rarely encountered things that scared him, but he was really scared. That kind of fear penetrates into the bone marrow. He was afraid that Sunian would say no, but what he was thinking in his heart proved that his dream was not a dream. No. Really not. Lee Baiken stepped forward and grabbed her arm. Really not. It's the kind of thing that makes you hurt and makes you suffer. Is it really not happening? Lee Baiken's appearance made Sunian stiffen. In Lee Baiken's sight, Sunian shook his head. When he saw Sunian shaking his head, Lee Baiken smiled. The stone in my heart was also placed on the ground. He knew he was dreaming, it was just a dream. Maybe I started to care about the woman in front of me, so I had that kind of dream. Baiken, what's wrong, are you feeling uncomfortable? Sunian would be a fool if she hadn't discovered something was wrong with Lee Baiken by now. It's nothing, it's just that the nightmare was a bit too scary. After Lee Baiken said this, he took a deep look at Sunian, but fortunately, it was just a dream. I don't know why, Sunian felt an inexplicable feeling when Lee Baiken looked at him like this. Is it scary? Sunian couldn't help but ask. After Sunian said these words, Lee Baiken paused. It's terrible. Sunian then walked up to him and hugged him. It's okay. Even if it's scary, it's just a dream. It'll be fine when you wake up. Lee Baiken hugged Sunian in turn. Yes, it was just a dream. Now that I wake up from the dream, everything will be fine. Lee Baiken's panicked heart calmed down today. That's right, it's just a dream. He will not let what happened in the dream happen. In the past, he only hurt her when he was controlled by the so-called plot. No, no matter what controls him in the future, he will not let him hurt her again. He will protect her. In the afternoon. The housekeeper beside the old man is here. When Lee Baiken saw the things in the housekeeper's hands, he wanted to ask him to take them back out of habit, but when he thought of the scene in the dream, he swallowed back all the words that came to his lips, softened his voice again and said, "There is nothing here." "Yes, please tell my dad not to send anything." But when the housekeeper heard this, he smiled and said, "Master, the things I have given you this time are useful to the young lady, so the young lady must accept them." This made Sunian, who was standing aside, became interested. I immediately came over. If Sunian lacks anything, I will arrange it. I will not treat her badly. But before Lee Baiken finished speaking, he was interrupted by the housekeeper. "Master, I know your feelings for the young mistress, but this time is very important." What the master means is that the young mistress must accept it this time, because this time things are very important to the young lady. The housekeeper's words completely brought Sunian's curiosity to its peak. But unlike Sunian, Lee Baiken had an ominous premonition, very ominous. Then in the sight of the two people, the housekeeper slowly opened the things. "I heard that my hands were tired today, so I specially arranged for me to deliver this hand cream as soon as possible." End of this chapter.